and welcome back to Nighttime. I'm your host, Matthew Bracker, alongside Patrick Perry. And quick shout out to Justice Covert for cooking up that new intro. It looks pretty good.
It looks amazing, honestly.
Yeah. But today we are going to be talking about some of the biggest Week 1 games. What was your favorite Week 1 game?
I think probably the Florida State-Boston College game. First team, I think, in recent memory to go 0-2 in two separate continents. So that's certainly a fact for
That was a win. That was a win for America.
Yeah.
But we're going to get into these games, starting with the Modelo Kickoff Classic, USC versus LSU. Now, this was a slow game, 0-0 at the start of the second. How about Kyron Hudson, right? He did his best Odell Beckham Jr. impression against his former team. That would lead to a Woody Marks touchdown in the second to start the scoring. Now, LSU would answer right back with this Kyron Lacey touchdown grab right here. You can see that. Ooh, look at that toe drag, right? Middle of the third quarter, 13-10, senior running back John Emery Jr. would get this LSU drive started, resulting in an Aaron Anderson score. See rolling down on the side. Now, trailing in the fourth, 13-17, Jacoby Lane would make this over-the-shoulder grab. USC would get the ball again, breaking the tie, as Woody Marks would find the end zone for the second time of the night. Now, LSU with 7 seconds on the clock would try to get a drive going, but Mason Cobb would pick it off on the first play of the drive, sealing this game, USC 27, LSU 20. Big game for both these programs as the win moves USC up 10 spots. I think this was a very strong showing for USC, and I think maybe we could consider them a playoff team if they keep showing out like this.
I think I could eventually see them as a playoff team. Obviously, the Big Ten is going to be really competitive, and right now with what's going on with LSU, I have no idea where their season's going to end up being when it's all said and done. But jumping into another top 20 matchup in Week 1, Notre Dame takes on Texas A&M. They went to Kyle Field. Not much going on in the game. It is 6-6 at the half. And then midway through the third quarter, Jadarian Prince goes in for the first touchdown of the game to take a 13-6 lead. Later on, it ends up being 13-all with just 4 minutes left in the game. And what a catch by Bo Collins. He kind of gets away with a little bit of a shove here. I'm surprised that there was a no call at the very end of that, but obviously that ended up keeping that drive alive, and the Irish end up scoring and tacking on 3 points later on after this for a final score of 23-13. Marcus Freeman's obviously very excited, and A&M is now falling out of the rankings as Notre Dame moves up to number 5.
Yeah.
Big win for Notre Dame, probably kind of getting the monkey off of their back in a sense with that big win on the road against an SEC team.
And big win for Marcus Freeman. I mean, I feel like he's really won that locker room over after a game like this. But looking at another one of Saturday's big matchups, Clemson and Georgia. Now, Clemson actually played some pretty good defense in this first half, right? They only held Georgia to like 6 points, but that would change as Carson Beck would find Kobe Young for a score. Now, later on in the game, Clemson would add a field goal, but Georgia just, they keep scoring. Now this time, it's going to be Nate Frazier at the goal line. He just runs right through the Clemson defensive line. Now, Clemson appeared to stop playing defense at this point because London Humphreys, I mean, I've never seen this kid play, but he toasted every single defensive back on this team for 40 yards. Look at those Jets. That is insane. Now, Cade Kubler would try to lead Clemson to, at least a trip in the end zone, but Malachi Starks would get up for this ball, making a crazy play for the pick, icing the game for the Bulldogs. Now, Cash Jones would he would find his way into the end zone at the end of the fourth, but it honestly didn't matter, right? This game was over as soon as the second half started. Georgia would go on to win this one 34-3, showing that they are still one of the most dominant teams in college football and honestly exposing Clemson to some criticism over them not landing a single transfer in the portal, which when you think about it, I mean, that's kind of insane.
Yeah, we're going to get more into what is going on with the program over at Clemson, but I will say the Malachi Starks interception was one of the more impressive interceptions that I've seen. Kirby Smart said after the game that he was super impressed with his play. So that's another thing to note. But moving into an ACC matchup on Labor Day, it was Florida State taking on Boston College. Florida State trying to avoid an 0-2 start, but the game wasn't so pretty at the start because Boston College is going to go up 14-0 very early on. And then in the third, he's rolling out, and it's 21-6 very quickly now. And then later on, DJU, he has to make a play, and he swings it off to Portier, and he ends up making a couple guys miss and breaking a few different tackles. But it probably was not going to be enough, as DJU and the boys could not get anything going, and obviously very sad.
Yeah.
28-13 is the final score. Boston College, now Florida State, 0-2 to start the season. Definitely not the way that Mike Norvell and company drew it up.
No, and I think nobody really expected this out of FSU. You know, I mean, after all the complaints about them missing the college football playoffs last year, to start a season like this it's just rough. But we're going to be moving on because we have a very special guest in the studio today, Ben Huber, who's on the sideline for the UCF game. He did some really great work for us. Ben, how are you doing?
I'm doing awesome, guys. Thanks for having me on the show. I feel great, and I'm ready to talk about some college football.
Absolutely. So there was a big slate of games in week 1. Who are your biggest winners from the first week of college football?
We talked about him earlier. I think it's Marcus Freeman in this Notre Dame squad.
I'd love to hear that.
He's got him
Great
playing
pick.
with that type of swagger and energy that I've never seen before. Obviously, Notre Dame is a storied college football program with lots of tradition and pageantry, but they're going for it on 4th down multiple times. Who is this, Dan Campbell? I mean, what are we seeing out here from Marcus Freeman? He's bringing the energy. In that one play where they didn't get it, I think that was a bad call by the refs, but just the fact that he shows his confidence in those guys to go for it on 4th down in those big situations just shows how much he trusts the team and the team trusts him.
And when we're looking at the rest of the week 1 outcomes, who was your biggest losers?
Biggest loser, I'd say it was DJU. DJU, you need to get a job. I think that the blame really falls on him with these FSU struggles. I think he's their signal caller. He was supposed to be the guy this year to replace Jordan Travis. And really, I mean, you can see the fall off and how big of an X factor Travis really was in this offense. And DJU just really can't get it together. Maybe he can make an improvement second half of the season, but their playoff hopes and ACC championship hopes are pretty much slashed. So.
Yeah, it's going to be a tough bounce back for that team for sure. But moving on from your winners and losers, there's a lot of big takeaways from this week, starting with this one. What we saw in that Clemson and Georgia game, do you think that tells more about Clemson's struggles or Georgia's just potential dominance this year?
I think it's more about Georgia just being the dominant team that we knew they were. And I think it really solidifies them as probably the favorite for the national championship. Obviously, the SEC is loaded, but I think Georgia is a shoo-in. I think they could totally do it. And Clemson will get it together closer to the end of the season, but a big loss like that to Georgia does not look good for them.
Yeah.
Now, looking ahead for Notre Dame, I know that they were your biggest winners of the first week of college football. What do you think their final win total will be for the rest of the season when you look at their schedule?
I have them losing one game, 11-1. I think they're definitely going to the playoffs. They looked really strong against A&M. So I think one loss is a good mark for them.
Okay, and this LSU game, with them losing another opener, I believe it's their 3rd straight in the last 3 years.
Yep.
Do you think that there's any regret in that building about bringing Brian Kelly?
I don't think so. I think you had to move on from Orgeron, and Kelly was the best decision at that point. I think he's still a good coach, but you know his struggles are pretty obvious. But I don't think there's any regret there. I think they made the right move.
Now, we have talked a lot about how FSU's 0-2 start is really, really poor for them. Is their season officially over? Are you willing to deem it done?
I think it's time to throw in the towel. It's over. 2 losses, even with the new college football system. They're in the ACC. If they're in the SEC and they had 2 losses, then maybe. But the ACC, I just don't see them having a shot at the playoff.
Yeah, it's going to be tough for them to bounce back, like I said. But thank you so much for joining us, Ben. And we're going to get into our Swords of the Week, highlighting our favorite offensive players. Mine is the wide receiver out of Alabama, Ryan Williams. 2 catches for 2 touchdowns, 139 yards. And this kid should be in high school, 17 years old, something about his credits. He gets into college early. He's on the field. I mean, that makes me sad as a 21-year-old.
Yeah, no, right. We feel like we should be doing more.
Yeah.
I mean, I chose a wide receiver as well out of Arizona, T-Mac. He had 10 receptions, 304 yards, and 4 touchdowns. He's 6'5", true junior. He's going to the NFL next year. No doubt about it.
Well, your guy beats my guy, but.
Oh, yeah, that's true. All right, coming up next, we have Stephen Brown coming on to talk about everything UCF football and their big win over New Hampshire.
It says in my notes you're an Oklahoma fan.
That is correct.
So, let me ask you, bud. Is Texas back?
All right, I put on a brave face a lot, but this year, I'm really scared that they are, man. Okay, they just beat Alabama. They're gonna be top 4 in the rankings. And last year, they beat us 48-0.
Yeah.
It was humiliating. We're the Oklahoma Sooners. We were the best ever. We were talk of the town. We had Baker, Kyler, and Jalen 3 years in a row. And now, are we good? I don't know. We haven't won a national title since 2000. We're number 18, I think, and nothing matters, dude.
Sometimes we build up these walls thinking they're impenetrable. But sometimes you have to knock these walls down to build up bigger and stronger ones. And you got to be tough through that. It's hard being an Oklahoma fan at this time, but grass is always going to be greener on the other side of the hill, buddy.
Is it? I cannot live through a Texas national championship. I can't. I'll never recover.
Do you want to talk about Lincoln Riley?
What'd you just say to me?
Thank you for sticking with us. And now we are welcoming in Stephen Brown to talk about the UCF game. What were your biggest takeaways from the New Hampshire game?
Hey guys, thanks for having me on. So my biggest takeaway was the complementary football that UCF was able to play. You watch that first quarter, the offense struggled, only putting up 6 points, but I thought the defense and the special teams really stepped up and put the offense in a position to succeed. The interception that Deshaun Pace had at the start of the second quarter, putting the offense on the 3-yard line for an easy touchdown, really changed the momentum of the game. And then after that, you could see the offense get into a rhythm and able to put up those 57 points that we all saw.
Yeah, that was a pretty fun game. You know, you can say what you want about KJ, and, we'll get to that, but that was a pretty fun game. But, I was just happy to see UCF football come back. So I have to ask you, Steve, what was your favorite part about just game day and being back?
Yeah, so I got kind of a little unpopular opinion, maybe I would say. I really like the new ticket system that UCF implemented. The ability for students to be able to claim a ticket online and not have to wait in a 4-hour physical line gives them more opportunities to enjoy the game day atmosphere, and I think it's just really good for UCF in general. There's still some things to fix with the system, but UCF acknowledges that, and I think as the season progresses, it will be better.
Yeah, I actually ended up getting my ticket fairly quickly for the Sam Houston State game that's coming up. But is there any cause for concern as far as KJ Jefferson's rough play in the opening game?
Yeah, I think it's just early season struggles. You know, he went 1 for 6 in that first quarter, but you also have to remember this is the first season of college football with that new in-helmet communication. Gus Malzahn said in the press conference that there's a big learning curve with that, but I think that going into next game that they'll be able to figure that out, and KJ Jefferson will be able to be better next game.
So I know that there was a recent press conference with Gus Malzahn. Can you kind of give us the rundown of what the vibe was from him talking about the New Hampshire game and leading up to Sam Houston? What was he exactly saying? What was his message to the team?
Yeah, there's a lot of new transfers obviously in this offense, and so he recognized that it's going to take some time for everybody to learn how to play together. So they're going to focus on that this week in practice and iron out those kinks for next game against Sam Houston State.
Yeah, and I think they'll be able to do it. But, the team that we saw on Saturday, was pretty good. But a lot of Big 12 teams had pretty good weeks. I mean, Colorado made it pretty close against NDSU. But how do you think that the team that we saw on Saturday is going to stack up against some of the other squads in the Big 12?
Yeah, so you look at the score, you see 57-3. I think that's a little misleading when you think about the competition that UCF is going to face in the Big 12 this season. You have a first quarter like you did against New Hampshire, against a team like Colorado or Arizona or Utah, and then UCF's going to have to play from behind, face an uphill battle, and that's definitely not something that you want facing a higher tier opponent than New Hampshire. No disrespect to the Wildcats.
Yeah, no disrespect to the FCS team. Now, they do bring in a former FCS team, now FBS in their second year, Sam Houston State this weekend. What are the keys to the game for that game on Saturday?
Yeah, so obviously the rushing attack is going to have to be just as good as it was. You see 454 yards, second most in program history. That's really impressive, but I would like to see more of a balanced attack on offense, maybe get some of our athletic weapons like wide receiver Kobe Hudson, tight end Randy Pittman more involved in the passing game. And I think that will lead to a more successful day on offense for UCF.
Yeah, Xavier Townsend only had 1 reception for 4 yards. There was pretty much zero involvement with the wide receivers in that first game. So they're definitely looking to get them more involved.
Big
now,
rushing.
there was still 454 rushing yards in that first game. Is that something that's going to be a point of emphasis for UCF going forward?
Yeah, you look at the box score, they were able to average 8.4 yards per carry. That's something that may not be sustainable for the entire season. You hope it is, but the running game is definitely going to be a point of emphasis against Sam Houston State. Again, lower tier opponent, should have a big lead going into the second half. So I think running the ball efficiently will be a big point of emphasis for UCF this upcoming Saturday.
Yeah, so the defense was flying around a lot on the last Thursday, but they weren't able to get any sacks. Did you hear anybody say anything about getting pressure on the quarterback this week whenever you were around the team, or was that something that they kind of just brushed under the rug and they said, look, you just weren't able to finish those plays, but you still made an impact, so we're just going to move on to next week?
So I didn't hear anything about it, but you look at the box score, you look at Sam Houston State season opener, and they gave up 6 sacks to Rice. So I think that's something that UCF will key in on in practice, try and get some more pressure on the quarterback, and I think that'll disrupt the game plan for Sam Houston and allow UCF to get off to a good start early.
Yeah, I don't think no sacks in the first game is too concerning. I mean, it's not a great stat, but I think they'll be able to pull it together. Now, going back to the offensive side of the ball, R.J. Harvey had an amazing game, 142 yards on 11 carries, 2 touchdowns. Do you realistically think that R.J. could find his way into the Heisman conversation this year?
I think it would be great if he could. He had the 2 first-half touchdowns, I believe. They were both in the first half. And if he can continue to put the ball in the end zone and get these explosive runs, I think he could definitely be in the Heisman competition. Gus Malzahn likes to have a lot of pre-snap motion with this offense, get our athletes out into space, keep the defense guessing, and I think if he can do that, then R.J. Harvey can definitely be in the Heisman conversation this year.
Yeah, it's going to be interesting to see because I personally believe that we have 4 starting level running backs on this team. So sharing the ball is going to be something that we're just going to have to watch this season. But thank you so much for coming on and joining us today. Appreciate it.
Thank you so much for having me on.
But now we are going to move on to our Shields of the Week, highlighting our favorite defensive players. And I'll get started talking about an FCS defensive back, Rob Carter Jr. out of Robert Morris University. Now, he had a good outing defensively against Utah State, but he had one of the absolutely most craziest interceptions I have ever seen. Just such an athletic play on the ball. I know we talked about Malachi Starks having the best interception of the week, but I think it should go to this guy. I mean, he's a contortionist out there. It's insane.
That's a good pick. Now, I chose the entire Idaho Vandal defense.
Really?
Yes, against Oregon. They lost 24-14, and they gave up 487 total yards. But it is the definition of the bend but don't break defense. They only got 1 technical turnover. There were a lot of 4th downs not converted by Oregon in that game, but still, they were only able to get 1 turnover, and it wasn't like Oregon had too many penalties. Right. They had 8 for 60 yards. But they only gave up 24 points, and they gave up 500 yards of total offense. I thought that was really impressive. Truthfully, the bend but don't break defense. And that game was close, too.
That's a
a
telling
lot of time
game
left,
for Oregon.
or a couple of minutes left in the fourth quarter.
Yeah. But that is going to do it for this segment. Thank you again, Stephen, for joining us. And we will be back to talk about some Heisman rankings, so don't go anywhere.
Jack, buddy, why are you here?
I don't really understand why I'm here. I got called a delusional fan. I just don't understand why I'm delusional if I think Kirk Cousins had the best mustache in the league.
Well, Jack, buddy, I don't want to be the one to tell you this, but I don't think anybody looks cool in handlebars.
But they're back, man. They're back.
They're not. They're not. Sometimes you just got to face the hard truth. It's right there in front of you. All these people, they're calling you delusional, but sometimes you got to worry about, am I projecting? Is it me? And in this
Let me
case,
tell you something, bud. It could never be me. Anything I say is factual and truth, and that's why the Vikings are going 16-1 this year.
organization, you have to look at your roster and say, I've had Kirk O'Duggins for 6 years. Maybe it's time to move on.
There is no moving on from Kirk Thuggins and Justin Jefferson.
Do you think that maybe this all started just because of a little disappointment?
Nothing has started. This is how I live, and I am not.
Welcome back to Nighttime. We are joined with Justin Barnes talking about some Heisman rankings. Justin, how are you doing today?
I'm doing great, thank you.
Of course. Now, big week of college football. A lot of great players, and we're going to talk about the Heisman ranking. So, Pat, if you want to start going down the list here.
Yeah, so we came up with a list of 7 different players who could potentially win the Heisman this year. Now we got a guy, R.J. Harvey, who's on this list. He may not be actually up for the contention, but we will go over his name as well. But Dylan Gabriel is the first name off the list. I believe he was the betting favorite to start the year.
Yeah.
I believe he is still the betting favorite even after the Idaho game. It was a close game, but he played well.
Yeah,
he didn't
did
play awful.
I have
so.
it here, 41 completions, 49 attempts.
That game still baffles me.
Yeah.
I know that Idaho was my shield. I'm still confused as to how they only put up 24 points in this game. I mean, I've everything that I've looked at as far as box score wise, I'm just continuously confused as to how it happened. They weren't great on third down, but I digress. If Oregon can continue winning against teams that aren't in the FCS, I think Dylan Gabriel's got a definite shot at winning the Heisman.
Yeah, I agree. I know I talked a lot of praises about Oregon last week. I think that he can be in that conversation at the end of the year. But moving on, we have a pair of teammates here at the number 2 and 3, Travis Hunter and Shadur Sanders. And, as much as we love to clown Colorado here, I thought that they both had a pretty good game. I'm not going to lie. That one interception by Shadur, off the foot of the NDSU guy, that maybe wasn't the best thrown ball, but that was just a tragic interception. But he finished the game 445 yards and 4 touchdowns. And Travis Hunter made one of the craziest catches ever.
Absolutely. If there was ever a defensive player that could win currently, it would be Travis Hunter because he plays on both sides of the ball. I mean, the big thing that we're going to see throughout this season is, and we saw it last season, was the total snap count and how much Travis Hunter plays.
Yeah.
I believe it was 133 snaps or whatever, and he played 132 in the previous game.
Yeah.
It's just all about that, and then obviously Sanders is going to be a top 5 pick in the NFL draft, so his name is going to be here come
throughout
the
year,
end of the year, next April, and it's going to be, obviously super relevant. Now, going over to our guest, what do you think about those 3 guys? I think that would be our top 3. Would be Dylan Gabriel, Travis Hunter, and Shadur Sanders.
I'm good with that.
Yeah.
Now, look, I like Dylan Gabriel a lot. I'm a Dolphins fan. He reminds me of Tua. He's not the best size. He's accurate. He's left-handed. He's Hawaiian. And also, he's a former Knight. So, we got to root for him a little bit. I think he has the best chance of winning if Oregon is as good as they're expected to be. Now, if you look at the stats for last week's game, frankly, they should have been better. Like Patrick said, the Idaho Vandals put up a great performance defensively, but Oregon only won 24-14 against the Vandals. And by all accounts, it should have been a butt whooping, right?
Right.
Oregon's a Big Ten team. They're great. I think if Gabriel gets the wheels turning on the offense, and if Oregon makes the playoffs, I think it's a no-brainer that he wins. But this team needs to have success, and he needs to contribute more. As for Travis Hunter, personally, he's my pick for Heisman. Just if you want to go preseason, I think he could be the first defensive player, or I guess athlete, if you want to call him, since Charles Woodson won it in 1997 as a quarterback / wide receiver. I don't think he's as good of a quarterback as Woodson was, but he is a great receiver. If you saw that catch that he made against NDSU, it was just insane. But I think if Colorado goes to the playoffs, I think he probably wins the Heisman because he's going to contribute a lot to that team. And as for Sanders, I think he's overhyped, personally. I think it's his last name. I think it's the school he goes to. I think it's the people he plays around. He had a good game, I'll give him that, but he's starting off hot. And he started off hot last year too, and they ended up 4-8.
Yeah,
I think he's a good player, but you just got to make sure he doesn't fail and take his stock for the Heisman.
Yeah, it'll be interesting to see how his season progresses because, like you said, he did start hot last year. That's true.
Yeah, I mean, hey, that whole Colorado team was in that same boat, as you mentioned. They ended up being 4-8. That was their first win since last October.
Oh my God.
Yeah, this past Saturday. So that was definitely something of
Didn't think
note.
of that. Yeah.
Yeah. I think that I have a lot more faith in Sanders than maybe you guys might. I do think he's going to be a top 5 NFL pick, so I think
Probably.
he has
I
to
can agree
kind of
with
be
that,
in
yeah.
the conversation. That's kind of what we've seen with the previous Heisman winners lately as well. But I know we got more players on this list.
Of course, including Ashton Jeanty, running back out of Boise State. He set a school record for 6 rushing touchdowns. I believe it was 6. Just an absolute monster game. Justin, what do you think about that game? Do you think, is that a testament to his talent or just, the FCS talent against him?
I mean, yeah, he had a good game, but stats aren't everything. I mean, even if he does have a killer year, if he gets 2,000 yards, if he gets 30 touchdowns, if he breaks every single rushing record, I still don't think he's going to win the Heisman.
Whoa.
Really?
Whoa.
Because, okay, and I'll tell you why.
Every single rushing record?
He's in a group of 5 school. Colt Brennan in 2006 finished top 10 in the country as a quarterback, or top 10 all time for single season passing touchdowns. He broke, never mind, he shattered the passing touchdown record with 58 touchdowns. He got 6th place in Heisman voting that year. Why? He played for the University of Hawaii, the same conference that Boise State is in. I don't think that, at least in this day and age, a group of 5 team player can win the Heisman. But, I mean, nothing's impossible. So
I
see where your logic.
Yeah,
yes.
actually, at first I was like, no way.
Yeah.
Because if he breaks every single rushing record, not to take you super seriously with everything that you say, but but like he would end up rushing for like 2,500 yards, and then like I just felt like Boise State with the auto bid potentially to the playoffs, they would have a chance at a national championship game, and they would have like some sort of cachet to them that other group of 5 teams wouldn't have. But I completely, honestly, agree with what you have to say.
I mean, we know how college football favors these, big conferences, so it's not completely outlandish. But
yeah, rolling through the next 3 really quick. We have Jackson Dart, Jalen Milroe, and R.J. Harvey. Obviously, Jackson Dart, quarterback for Ole Miss. They took care of business against UT Chattanooga last week, so it was like 60-3 or whatever.
That was insane.
And then Jalen Milroe for Alabama. We obviously saw him last year. And then R.J. Harvey, who's UCF.
yeah, I like that guy.
Any of those guys that you could potentially see getting any sort of votes or making a run at the Heisman?
I'm going to stick with the home team. I'm going to say R.J. Harvey.
Yeah.
No, it's going to be hard for him to sustain the stats that he had, especially if he played against New Hampshire because, A, they're New Hampshire, but also he shares a backfield with a bunch of talented running backs. I don't want to name any names, but every single one of them is a dog. And if your only pressure for the year is, I have to share a room with a bunch of good players, I think you're in a good place to succeed.
That is true. We have a lot of really talented running backs on this team. So it'll be interesting to see how it pans out. But Justin, thank you so much for joining us and giving some of your thoughts. But that is sadly going to do it for us here at Nighttime today. Thank you so much to all our guests who joined us, and stay tuned for next week.
Wait, do we have a game of the week?
Oh, do we have a game of the week?
We had Texas, Michigan.
Yes, Texas, Michigan. I'm wrong. Second episode.
I'm taking Texas.
I'm
taking Texas.
taking
I'm so sorry.
Texas too.
Justin, we need your pick too. Texas or Michigan?
I'm going to
Texas,
go Michigan.
Michigan?
Michigan, okay.
Okay.
Go
So
against the
Texas
grain
up here, Michigan over there?
Yeah.
Fair enough.
Fair enough.
All right, now you can end.
Okay, thank you.
Yep.
Thank you so much, again, everyone who came on today. Stay tuned. We'll see you next week. This has been Nighttime. I'm Matthew Bracker. This is Patrick Previty. Have a good one.